arid and semi-arid regions. About arid, semi-arid, I think this could be a possible question this year. Okay, last year I was anticipating a question on the marine landforms, and they did ask on spits and tombolos. So quickly, you should know what the deserts are. We're talking about largely the tropical deserts. Now, in terms of the processes, as we know, these are wind-driven processes, and some of the important names are deflation, attrition, because of the impact of the sediments. The processes also include saltation. Saltation is those leaps, okay, jumps that sediments have. The sediments can jump like this, they jump like this, they jump like this. When they're blown by the winds, we call this as deflation. When they keep on jumping near the floor, we call this as saltation. Know these terms, okay? I don't expect they'll ask you, but know these terms. Now, one of the features that you can look up is what are mushroom rocks. They're also called as rock pedestals, the big large ones. Sometimes they're also called as gara. Same, gara is called in Sahara Desert. So what are these? They essentially are formations that look like mushroom like this. These are rocks. These are the narrow rock stems. Okay. And how are they formed? They are erosional features formed because of erosion of the lower rocks by sand blasting. So this probably was a much bigger rock because of sand blasting here. Okay, the sand striking here, saltation, and over time this now gets eroded. This gets eroded. This gets eroded. What we're left with is something like this. So they are formed because of erosion of the lower rocks by sand blasting. Nothing much to add, just know these names. Okay, and these are again examples of sand abrasion, the lower rocks. So that's about it, nothing much to add here. Then what are Inselbergs? So these are isolated rocks. Okay, these are residual rocks, very importantly, hard, resistant rocks. In most cases, these are formed from granites. A very important feature of Inselbergs is that they have steeper slopes, side slopes. Then Inselbergs, they are different from monadnocks. They're different from monadnocks. Monadnocks, these are because of the fluvial process. They are on the peneplain. They are residual rocks because of down wasting, and they will have gentle slopes. So if this is an Inselberg, then this is a monadnock. This is Inselberg and this is monadnock. Okay, so monadnocks are entirely fluvial in origin. The process is what's called as down wasting. If you remember the Daviesian model of down wasting, the residual rocks on the Daviesian peneplain. So monadnocks essentially are identified with Davis model, whereas Inselbergs are more identified with L.C. King's model, although Penck also has referred to them. But they're best explained by L.C. King's model. And you can add a few lines on how they're formed. Process of formation, they are debated. The most acceptable form of process is the process of parallel retreat and pedimentation. This can explain Inselbergs, and this is L.C. King's idea. आपको short note लिखना है, okay? So do not explain the entire process. Maybe you could attempt a small description in one paragraph maybe. So maybe this is the landform. Over time, okay, this is moving back and this is moving back and this moves back, it moves back, this moves back, moves back. So what we are left with ultimately is this. This becomes your Inselberg. Okay, so parallel retreat of the slopes and This is the process of pediplanation. Pediplanation slope grows here and the back wasting happens. So this is the Inselberg. Just draw 2 or 3 lines. Draw this and maybe you can have a small description. How the vertical faces move back, the vertical faces retreat, and the pediment that starts growing, pediplanation process. So what you are left with is ultimately, this is the landscape. This is the Inselberg. And in the conclusion do mention that Inselbergs are very interesting features. There is no consensus as to how these landforms are made, and these are features of semi-arid and arid regions. And Inselbergs, okay, the most famous one is Ayers Rock, or locally called as Uluru. Okay, so 2-3 lines on this. Okay, about how Inselbergs are formed and what they are. So if you want to look this up, you have a small paragraph in post 465, but nothing like how we have explained. हमें तो answer चाहिए ना, not simply by knowing what it is. I must write as a part of an answer. Like Uluru Rock is considered sacred. It is one of those, is considered as one of the natural wonders, the 7 natural wonders. Yes, in Australia. So that takes care of Inselbergs. Write a note on what are yardangs and what are zeugens. Page number 466. Savindra Singh. So this is one work I'm leaving for you. What are yardangs and what are zeugens? Differentiate karo, maybe 10 mark mein. So try writing not more than 1.5 page with some diagram. So both of them are erosional features. Both are like ridges, both formed in the deserts. Yardangs has horizontal beds. Zeugens have vertical beds. They look like ridges. The beds can be horizontal beds or the beds can be vertical beds. Beds alternate hard and soft rocks. Yes. They alternate hard and soft rock. So maybe hard rock, soft rock, hard rock, soft rock, hard rock, soft rock, hard rock, soft rock, and so on. Or Barchans, Barchans. Barchans. And I've also mentioned how are they different from parabolic dunes. Parabolic dunes are much more smaller. They're found along the coasts. They are stabilized by vegetation, some grasses and bushes. Okay, they are stabilized. Orientation is against the winds. This is the wind direction, and you have got grasses here that stabilize. So parabolic dunes ho gaya ye. And Barchans, they are larger. They are migratory, found mainly in sandy deserts. And इसका orientation ठीक उल्टा है. The orientation of this is exactly different. इसका wind direction is like this. So this is the windward side. This is the leeward side. The windward side is gentle and the leeward side is steep. And these horns, they project downwind direction. So this is the difference between parabolic dunes, and they are migratory. Okay, so kal discuss kiya tha. You can look this up in a quick short discussion. What are mushroom rocks? How are they formed? What are yardangs and zeugens? What are Inselbergs? What are Barchans and parabolic dunes? So a comparison, again, 10 mark you are through. The more important discussion is discussing Bolsons, pediments and playa lakes. This could be a proper question. So these are again features of semi-arid regions. They are formed by fluvial process, formed by local streams and local rivers. Now, Bolson is depositional feature. It includes Bahada and the playa lake. Pediments, these are flat, extensive, erosion plains and playa lakes. These are water accumulations inside intermontane basins. So if we draw a figure, so this is a mountain, this is a mountain or elevations, erosional pediment, depositional bahada. This is the playa lake, okay, and this is the Bolson. The Bolson includes both, okay, playa lake and the bahada. It includes the playa lake and the bahada together as the Bolson. So if you want, you can look up page number 472. There's a diagram. You can use this. You also have a diagram on in your Goching Leong also. Page number 61. Okay, now if I continue on this, I repeat, जो pediment है, the pediment is a flat, very, very gentle, sloping, extensive plains along and beyond the foot of a mountain. A pediment, they are features of semi-arid regions, and their formation is debated. ये कैसे बने हैं? So we have two theories. We have Lawson and even Penck. They talk about parallel retreat process. So if this is the original landscape, parallel retreat, parallel retreat, parallel retreat, parallel retreat. This has been growing. Ultimately, what we have is some elevation like an Inselberg and extensive flat plain here. So they talk about parallel retreat, erosion, and the slopes are receding back. The slopes receding back. This was given by Lawson, and this was also mentioned by Penck in his ideas. The more acceptable version is given by Gilbert, lateral erosion theory. Now what he's saying is that pediments are because of erosion and flattening by streams. So essentially, maybe this was a mountain area. There's some river here. The river starts eroding on both sides, and slowly, gradually, the river starts eroding the sides. So what this happens is, this kind of becomes this, this kind of becomes this. The river is eroding laterally. The river is eroding laterally. Okay. This is the work of erosion and flattening by the streams. And in the process, this becomes something like this. There is a deposition zone near the river, and there is an erosional surface beyond. Okay, so they have become two parts now. There are two parts. So we have this part as the aggradation zone of the pediment, and this becomes the erosion zone of the pediment. And this idea of Gilbert was also supported by Johnson. Both say that the pediments are primarily because of lateral erosion and flattening by the streams. These develop in intermontane basins between the mountain. Okay, so between the mountain. So maybe this was the original mountain like this, and inside the mountain here, all of this is happening. Becomes this, it becomes this, it then becomes this. Okay, it happens in the intermontane basin. So there is a zone of erosion towards the foothill of the mountain, and there is a zone of aggradation along and near the river course itself. So आपको यही लिखना है. What are pediments? How are pediments formed? Okay, what are the features of the pediments? One theory, आपकी किताब में 3 theories हैं, but you remember, one is the Lawson's theory, which is like the parallel retreat, just as Penck has mentioned, and the second theory is the lateral erosion theory. अगर पढ़ना है page 472 and page 473. That's enough for 1.5 page of write-up. Now, arid cycle, I will not discuss much. They have asked once already. I will discuss the savanna cycle. But arid cycle, just to tell this to you, this is a cycle that represents the work of rivers in arid regions. Okay, this is not the work of winds. Arid cycle is about the work of river in arid regions. Arid cycle operates for mountain deserts and in the intermontane zones. There is a mountain like this in the deserts, and there is a river that is flowing down like this. And in this there is a river that flows down the slopes like this. It is on this that the cycle operates. How does this mountain eventually start developing deeper valleys? Like this, the mountain starts developing pediments like this. Then it's left with something of this kind. So remember this, it is not a cycle applicable for deserts. It is a cycle applicable for work of rivers in arid regions, and it applies to mountain deserts. Mountain deserts basically are elevation mountains inside the desert. If you know about Ahagar Plateau, Sahara, Tibesti Mountains, or you know about Al-Hijaz Mountains in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so these type of mountains will have the arid cycle. So arid cycle is not a cycle for the deserts, remember. It's a cycle for the mountains in the deserts where there are rivers that start creating the landforms. This is an important distinction. And then there are stages. There is an initial stage. Initial stage, there is a mountain upliftment. Okay. There is a river flowing through it. Slowly, gradually, the river starts developing as a part of a centripetal drainage. Then what happens is there is a playa lake formation. So these four events are part of the initial landscape. In the youthful landscape, the river now starts both erosion and deposition. The river flows into the playa lake, and there is a formation of the bahada. Okay, so there is a mountain, there is a lake, the rivers are flowing along the slopes here. Into this, the rivers flows down into this. So this becomes the playa lake, and this is the depositional bahada. This is depositional bahada. And this is the pediment. This is the pediment. So in the youthful stage, the river starts erosion and deposition. The river drains into the playa lake. There is a bahada formation, which is depositional feature like a plain. And there is an erosional feature developing called as the pediment. So this is typically the youthful stage. In the mature stage, the bahada is further enriched. The mountains are receding. They're going back, and the pediment is elongating. And then you have the senile stage. The mountains are reduced to Inselbergs. The surface is flat and gentle sloping like a penny plane. So wind action also becomes prominent. Okay, so these are the four stages. The initial stage में सब कुछ बन जाता है. Youthful stage में the bahada starts forming. The mature stage, the bahada becomes richer, becomes much more thicker. The mountains have become much more smaller, and the pediment has become bigger. And in the senile stage, the whole landscape is now flattening off. The whole landscape is now becoming a kind of a flat peneplain. Okay, that takes care of the arid cycle of erosion.